My name is Mace Mentch, and I am the Vice President of 2D-Me, and I am also a consultant in instructional design and technology. Being a consultant means that you're an old guy that's semi-retired and you go out and do stuff when you want money. So just so you know what the definition of that is. I'm trying to save my profession, which is instructional design and technology, and how by discovering its true identity through text mining. The background of my profession is important to this talk. It started out as a hybrid between audiovisual education and psychology. But probably like most of your professions, over the last 4 decades, it's really changed. A lot of the things that we do involve technology, and so you can imagine how quickly that it's changed. When I look at the ads for my profession, I see that the #1 requirement is knowledge of Captivate and Storyline. And these are applications that are used to create interactive media. And there is little mention of learning science, and I consider myself to be a learning scientist. And the learning science has been relegated to desired rather than required, and that bothers me somewhat. Okay, what the perception of us is interesting as well, because we have about 10 different titles, probably more than that. And we justify this by saying it's under the umbrella of instructional technology. Well, no. Instructional technology is something that's completely different than instructional design. Okay? So I needed to find a way to learn what the true identity of the profession is. So what I decided to do was I decided to go to the academic research. So I found 569 articles that were relevant to instructional design and technology, which I text mined. I looked at 3 journals from 2004 to 2013 as my corpus, and this is how I got involved in text mining and text analysis. So you may say, so what? What's this whole thing about text mining and text analysis? Well, first of all, there is an enormous amount of untapped data out there. Let's just look at the internet. Depending on who you talk to, 80% of all data that's out there is text. It's unstructured text. There are 30 trillion web pages with about 100 million gigabytes of information. I don't know, that's probably changed since I put this on the slide. I think there's probably 100 trillion websites out there. And most of it is unstructured data. Looking at libraries, well, let's look at the Library of Congress. There's 120 million items in the Library of Congress. There are 530 miles of bookshelves, 18 million books, and 54 million manuscripts. And that's a lot of data, that's a lot of text, and that's a lot of data. Okay? It was kind of shaky at the beginning for text mining and text analysis because there was so much to do. It was so time-consuming to do text analysis. Actually, there was text analysis that was done in World War II to look at Nazi propaganda, but basically they were looking at frequencies of certain words in the text of the propaganda. It really didn't take off until they started to use computers, the digital side, to take a look at text. As a matter of fact, in 1979, 400,000 text data items were mined in a month from 5,400 newspaper articles. So that helped us to get started. So what is the process that you go through in order to do text mining? And I'll show you some true life examples here. First of all, you need to establish your corpus. You need to collect and organize your domain-specific data and information. Then you need to pre-process it. Pre-processing takes a lot of work. For example, it's just not turning the text into numbers, which is very important. I'll tell you why. It's also doing things like adding stop words. Stop words take words like the, those things that have little meaning out of it, because it makes the processing easier for your computer, okay? And then what you want to do is you want to take that text and structure it by turning the text into numbers so that you can apply algorithms and statistical methods to the text. And that will allow you to extract knowledge or discover patterns and, from the pre-processed data. Here's some real life stuff. This is my unstructured data. Of course, my 569 articles are not here. I put it in Excel because most applications that use text mining do allow you to import your corpus in through Excel. This is my pre-processed data. What I did is these are terms or concepts which I turned into numbers so that I could perform statistical methods. And finally, here's some of my extracted knowledge that I got out. This is only one part of the extracted knowledge that I got from those 569 articles. Okay? Now, you might say, well, how can I use this with my students? How can I get my students involved in this? Well, I think the most important thing for the students to know is that they can actually create and discover new knowledge. When we listened to Paul this morning in the keynote, he talked about how the digital humanities, they don't find any new information. No, you can. You can find new information, and you can also create and discover new information through text mining. Okay, so that's very important for your students to know. And it's absolutely imperative that there's a collaboration between the professor and the student. And I'll get into this more later as well. But the thing about it is that you need a subject matter expert to work with you in text mining, because some of the relationships that you'll come up with are obvious, and students will discover those right away. But other things are quite subtle. And if you don't have a handle on the subject, for example, history, literature, music, those sorts of things, you won't get it. And I think that's one of the most exciting things about doing text mining. Okay? I also, in Paul's keynote this morning, he talked a little bit about the flipped classroom. And I didn't see like he liked the flipped classroom too much, or maybe I didn't understand. But Wes Baker and myself developed the flipped classroom in the year 2000. And not the two high school teachers from New Jersey in 2009 that you read a lot about, but I'll let that one go. But anyway, how many of you know what the flipped classroom is? Okay, so you all know. And that's where you take the lecture or some of the content out of the classroom, which opens up the classroom for the project or the homework. I used to travel around the country for the Ameritech. They were a phone company around here as a fellow. Wendy was a fellow with that as well. And I used to travel around the country for faculty development. And what they wanted us to do is they frequently wanted us to include students, which I thought was fantastic. And so I would always ask the same question to the students. I would say, do you need more help with the lecture, with the content, or do you need more help with the homework or the projects that you're working on? And almost 100% of the time, the students would say, I need more help with the homework. I need more help with my projects. So I think that this is a great opportunity. Now, we're not losing the discussion because that time that you opened up for the lecture is also available for discussion and conversation, and you can continue that offline as well. This is just a depiction of, this is your traditional classroom here with the professor up front, and you can see the students are sitting there and some of them are paying attention and everything. And this is the flipped classroom. Here, the professor is working shoulder to shoulder with the students and helping them. And that is really needed. I'm going to say this many times, but you really need an expert to work with you at the beginning when you start out with text mining. Okay. The other thing that's important here is in instructional design, we have a method that's called backward planning, or plan with the end in mind. And it's also called a terminal performance objective. And every terminal performance objective has 3 different parts to it. It's what do you want your students to know? What do you want your students to do? And what do you want your students to value? I think that I'll start out a little bit with what I want the students to value. The first thing I want them to value is the enormity of the amount of data that's out there and is available to them. Secondly, I want them to know that they can discover and create new knowledge in the social sciences and in the humanities in subjects like literature and music and historical documents and speeches and whatnot. So that's an important thing for students to value. The other thing that they can value is the opportunity to work shoulder to shoulder with the professor. Okay, so what do I want them to know? I want them to know the mechanics of text mining. And what does that mean? How do you collect data? Well, what are the applications that I can use? How does that work? What am I looking for? And all those, things. So those are the things that I want them to be able to do. But, no. But the most important thing is I'm a real advocate of hands-on learning and individualized learning. And this is a perfect opportunity. They're not going to learn it by reading about it. They actually need to do text mining, okay? And I want them to be able to pick a subject that they're very much interested in, and I want them to be able to text mine that subject, okay? Again, there's a very important consideration here. This is a correspondence analysis, if you're familiar with statistical techniques. And you can see that there are groups of concepts and information, and it's outlined here. And if you don't know enough about the subject matter, you won't know why these relationships are showing up. In a correspondence analysis, things that are the closest together are the things that are related. So if you don't know that much about the subject, you won't know why all those dates are clumped together and why some of these other things are related. You need to be able to do that. Okay? I'd also like to tell you a little bit about some resources. I've used all 4 of these resources in my research. And the first one is SPSS Modeler, which is expensive unless you get the student version. Does anybody use SPSS Modeler? Do you use it? No. It is an add-on to, the text mining part is an add-on to SPSS Modeler. It's really good. It'll do just about anything you want, but I think out of the ones I'm going to show you, it has a high learning curve. The next one is StatSoft Statistica. That's also a paid program that has really good visualizations for your text mining project. And you can do a lot of the functional work in there. These 2 are free. This one's called RapidMiner, and there's an add-on to RapidMiner, and it's their text mining. It's kind of unusual because it's kind of like object-based. So once you get used to that, it's pretty great, actually. But the one I like the best, and the one I would recommend you use if you're going to start your students on text mining and text analysis, is this one. It's called Voyeur. And it'll do just about anything. And the neat thing about Voyeur is that it's web-based and it's free. And it has so many visualizations that you can get, so many statistical methods that you can use. As a matter of fact, that correspondence analysis that I showed you before came from Voyeur online. And the other thing that I really like about it, and I did a lot of this in my research, was the trending part. And here's the trend line. So you can see the trends in your data. I wanted to find out how did the concepts and how did the terms change over time to define the true identity of my profession, and that really served a good purpose there. You might say, well, Mace, you know, in your own research, what did you find? I did discover new information that I didn't know before. First of all, the two most important terms over those 10 years were scaffolding, if you know what scaffolding and learning is, and the other one is cognitive load. So those are two things. I did find out that the people that read academic journals are academic researchers. So I decided what I needed to do is I need to branch out, and I need to text mine blogs and so forth from the practitioners. And then I want to take it one step further. I want to make my hair a little bit whiter. I want to take it one step further and actually text mine curricula from colleges and universities that offer these things to students, because I want to see, is it matching up with the research, and is it matching up with what the practitioners are talking to us about? So we can open up for questions.